From your background in financial administration, how did you hear about EMBL? What did you know about it before you came to work here?
I used to work for the Medical Research Council in the UK, and the Medical Research Council supplied the two delegates to council, to EMBL Council, and it was the route of money from the UK to EMBL. So I went around the MRC doing lots of different jobs and then fell into doing internal audit. And whilst I was doing internal audit, there was the MRC's Director of Finance, who was also EMBL's UK representative, and he was Barton Dodd.
Mm-hmm. I remember Barton.
Yeah, he was quite a character, quite memorable. And Barton asked me to go and do an audit of the MRC Transition Fund, which had been given to the EBI to assist it to move from Heidelberg, where it was the EMBL data bank, to Hingston. And it was about £2 million worth of money, which was given to be spent within a set period. And indeed, I took that report back, Barton looked at it, and he put it in the desk drawer, as you do with those kind of things. And I thought no more about it. Then Barton came out to EMBL to become the administrative director. And he wanted to have the same kind of internal audit that he was used to back in the UK. And he put out an appropriate job vacancy. I saw it. And the one thing I never managed to do at the MRC was to work at a research unit. And if you work at a head office, you get one view of science, you get one view of how things are happening and so on. But you are at least one step, if not more, removed. And I wanted just to be closer to the coalface. And working at the coalface has been fascinating. Because there is something about the energy and the enthusiasm of people who don't know what the answer is, but they're determined to find it.
You know, the way grants are given out and funding is apportioned, they expect you to be able to give a detailed budget, fully justified for the entire period of the grant. That's not basic research. How do you see that from your side? Because you're there to hold us accountable and make sure that I don't take research money, go off and buy Ferraris or something.
Well, I think from my perspective, sort of serving the committees who are making the decisions about funding and so on. And there was really quite a distinct shift from when I started. It was still in that period where what really mattered was the excellence of the science.
Yes.
It didn't matter. Yeah, but it didn't matter what it was going to do or what it was going to say. And if this person came in with a really excellent, cracking piece of a scientific proposal, and they went away and they did it, and they thought that what they were going to achieve was this.
Yes.
Or thought might get from that, but actually they found out no, it's not that at all. It's something completely different. That was totally valid.
That was okay.
Because you were always expanding the knowledge, the understanding. And so when I was first there, I was just really the back end of that excellence being pretty much the major and the sole criteria. And then there was that big shift into saying, but this is taxpayers' money. What are you going to deliver? What is the taxpayer going to get out of this that is of benefit?
Yeah, perfectly fair question.
Which is a very good question, but it runs against the excellence where you don't know what the answer is going to be because it's just so cloudy, just so basic.
It is the answer is they're going to get something delivered in the best way possible with the tools available.
So I think what it did do was it sharpened up the thinking.
Yes.
It sharpened up the thinking of the researchers putting in the applications. And there's always an element of gains in this. In the UK, you have the grant giving bodies, you get to know how to put an application together. You get good, I think, at working out how to play this is not quite the right word, but to work through these kind of things. But I think it has genuinely squeezed the really basic end. And that has been difficult. And I think one of the things I've been really pleased to see has been the Environmental Research Initiative, which is scraping for little bits of funds here and there. It hasn't got any great funds, supported by EMBL. But it's trying to do that kind of get people together who are very good, who are very bright and focused, and get them talking to find out what can actually happen and to try ideas at a very, very early stage. Say, well, will this work? Is there anything in this? When I arrived at the EBI, it was in a bit of a crisis, partly because we had received the funding from EMBL. We'd also received funding from the EC in the framework programs. And the 5th framework program had, at the very last minute, excluded funding for places like the EBI. So there was a major funding crisis going on. Graham Cameron, who was one of the joint heads of Outstation, was doing a superb job in keeping everybody cool, calm and collected at the EBI. And Michael Ashburn, who was the other joint head, was really fighting back, mounting the barricades, and getting a letter written by 60 really well-known scientists, including Nobel laureates, etc., saying what a foolish decision this was by the EC. And that went off to Nature and it did its job. And we actually managed to get back into funding from the EC. I think that probably underlined how dependent we were on, at times, what can be quite capricious elements and so on. And it's also, so we were always keen to expand the range of funding that we got. And it was just about the time that the Wellcome Trust, in addition to all the support it given in providing the campus, in providing the buildings on the campus, was also investing in the ensemble project. And that was fairly major funding coming through. And it posed challenges for us as administration because it was new and it worked in a different way to EC funding. But it was, you're working with the funding bodies. And I think one of the nice things about working with the funding bodies is they want things to work as well. They're not, it's not like a strictly commercial contractual relationship where you're delivering so many widgets at the end of X, Y, and Z, but you are doing something very different. They are investing in what you are doing.
Yes, and they want value for the money they've put in. They want to see it's gone well.
Yeah, and we also, because Janet, when she came in as director in 2001, Janet Thornton, one of the things that she was able to do was to persuade the UK research councils that they too should allow us to apply for grant funding. And in fact, the BBSRC became a very big source of grant funding and so on. So you then begin to have an organisation that is increasingly dependent on grant funding, getting towards 50-50 from EMBL funding. The EMBL funding has a long-term feel to it, although it comes through in 5-year programs and so on. There is some sense that you're going to have a fairly good sense, at least 2 years ahead of renewal of funding, how things are going, whereas the grant funding is always for a year or for 3 years. One of the things you then have to get very good at is managing a combination of resources, which are short-term or which need to be used and so on, but which are still within the terms and conditions of the grants that have been awarded and the money which is there.